My fellow Brits and Irishmen, you guys are feeling it now, aren't you, in the UK? Look, guys, we warned you a long time ago to never give up your 2A rights. But here we are. Here we are. Guys, it's no laughing matter, really. It's a really serious thing. Islamic fascism is taking over the UK. This has been well documented for years. We've seen videos for years of terrorist attacks and Muslim speakers out in Speaker's Corner in London talking about how they take over the country. Birmingham, they're in the mosque, they're talking about getting out of the cities and going into the countryside and taking over the country and bringing in and abusing the immigration system that they've been doing for 20, 30 years, no thanks to their politicians since Tony Blair. Since the 90s, almost 30 years, about 25 to 30 years, 27 years, since they've been just abusing the immigration system. Now, I'm pretty sure from the thesis that I've gathered is that uh, Britain is a Christian country. They want Christian immigration, they want controlled immigration, and they've never had that immigration control, even though they've asked for it. Now, from my understanding, there is a little bit of racism at play, but it's mostly Muslim, anti-Muslim, and that's a good thing. Islam has no place in Europe. It has no place anywhere in the world. It's a virus, and it is a political ideology masquerading as a religion. I just find it kind of disgusting on the part of the British government that they're going against their own indigenous population. And when you have videos and scenes of people in Northern Ireland, they're carrying Irish flags and they're carrying the Union Jack side by side. Historically, Catholic and Protestant rivalries wrecking that region for years in terms of, Christian internal conflict. They see the bigger threat because you're bringing in all these Muslims and it's uncontrolled on these boats, thousands in each day. And they're not going to crack down on the illegal migration, the unvetted migration, the boats. They're not going to send the Royal Navy out to go stop anything. They're going to go and arrest you and put you in jail within a week for protesting against the two-tier policing system that has been well documented for years. I mean, I've seen cases where there was, again, Christians that were immigrants, like I'll put their name out, Hatun Tosh. She was stabbed on video. And what happened to that person that stabbed them, that Muslim that stabbed them? She's a Christian speaker, speaks out against Islam, by the way, for the context. She was stabbed, nothing happened. I've seen violent attacks perpetrated against Christian speakers, debaters against Islam, and Muslims in the UK. And these videos of Muslims, they brag how they're going to take over the country. And when you see this two-tier policing system and Muslim migrant men roaming the streets of these large cities, because they've taken them over via immigration. These people weren't here just 30 years ago. And that's the whole point, is that you've seen a radical shift. Another thing is that you need to have the Christian minority population. There are non-white Christians, obviously, in the UK, and I'm pretty sure most of these protesters don't mind that. Sure, there's some radical elements that are truly racist in that manner, but most of the immigrants coming across the UK have been in the last 30 to 40 years, and more importantly, the last 10 years. And it's funny because they blame these Western European people for them coming over there in the first place, saying that they take their resources and they take their country and all that. That's total nonsense, because they're the ones coming from these countries. It's their governments that are doing it. And then on top, you're voting in the same practices and the same policies that you supposedly despise leaving that country, Islamic country of origin. And there's true, refugees out there from these Islamic countries, mostly Christians, that we should be taking in, and we're not taking them in. And that's another problem as well. Why aren't we prioritizing? If I was a UK citizen, I'm just an observant from the US, but I have, some British ancestry. My fiance, who's about to be my wife, she's of Indian descent. She has family that's Indian that's living in England. So I can understand from their perspective that they can live in a bit of fear if they don't get the facts right, that there is a contingent of political Islam taking over their country. And when they realize that is the real threat, they don't want their country turning in to Gujarat or whatever province, Eastern Indian province, that's getting wrecked with radical Islamism, or they don't want to have it turn into Pakistan. They don't want to have it turn into, Gujarat province or something like that, or Bharat or anything like that. They see the problems, they see the elements. And if you're an Indian Christian, you need to go hand in hand with your Christian brethren, the native indigenous British, and hold hands with them and fight against political Islam. It's your moment, it's your time. Because if you don't do it now, it's going to only get worse. You see some of the biggest cities in the UK, they're controlled by Muslims. The mayors, they're all Muslim. The London mayor, Sadiq Khan, he said that terrorism is part and parcel of any big city, when that's complete horseshit. We see in Poland and Hungary complete stops to Islamic migration. They like migration from other Christian people, but they don't like migration from Muslim countries because, again, they see that as a threat. And, there's even substantial Buddhist and Hindu populations in Europe. No problems for the most part there because it's been controlled, and also they're not radically trying to change the culture of the country they're migrating to. And they do try to do their best adapting to British customs. And that's something that you notice as well. They're more conformable to the adopting culture. If I was going to India, if I was going to Pakistan, if I was going to a Muslim country, if I'm not a tourist, right? If I'm not a tourist, I'm not going to be going there and trying to move there with millions of my fellow people and saying, we're taking over and doing all this and all that and trying to change your laws. And, 5 million Englishmen start moving to Iraq. Well, yeah, you already saw the problems right there from the beginning. So, yeah, there's not going to be a lot of acceptance in the Islamic world, accepting millions and tens of millions of Christians. Why should Muslims accept the fact that these Christians don't want millions and millions of them in their countries? So you see a great dividend. And what we're seeing right now is this, anti-racism protest narrative going on too. And that's another false narrative, because this false allegiance with Islam and the left, the leftist ideologies are fractured to begin with. Then you add Islam into that. Islam is a very far right ideology. You claim that these British people protesting and rioting against a two-tier policing system and uncontrolled, unvetted migration and Islamic fascism in their own country, and then you have literally nothing going on. There's videos of an Islamic man saying, cut the throats of these protesters, these Christians trying to protest against Islamic fascism. Are they going to get arrested? There's mobs of Muslim men rioting in Birmingham, attacking a lone British man at the pub. Are they arrested? No. Men with knives and clubs and all these weapons walking around? No. There's going to be a time when, actually, before I mention this, back in the 1920s and 30s, Prohibition era, young British men from Ireland, Scotland, England, they were on small boats. They were shipping small arms and booze to the U.S. All this illegal booze, all under the radar. Small boats. Very similar to the illegal mass migration of millions and millions of Muslim men into the United Kingdom. And they're also on top of that, just not being hindered at all by the Royal Navy. So the Royal Navy's not going to do anything when we, as Christians living across the pond in Canada, in the United States, in New Zealand, and in Australia, we decide to privatize our funds and say, you know what? Let's go migrate back to the UK. And we won't be migrating with booze. We will be migrating back with small arms and ammunition to our fellow Christians taking back their country. And it's, again, up to the Christian population. That includes the native Brits, the Christian Indians, all coming together. And also the Christian Jamaican population that lives in the UK, which is very heavily prominent. You guys have to realize you do not want to live in a Iran 2.0, in a Lebanon 2.0, in the UK. This is the United Kingdom. And this is the problem. The left has been attacking Christianity for years. The Muslims have been attacking Christianity for years, using the left as a tool to get ahead, using the immigration system that should have been checked 20, 30 years ago to get ahead. And it's only up to you. And at some point, it might just take some finances and some, well, small arms weaponry to actually take your country back. This is why we have a Second Amendment. We don't want to see our country turn into some Islamic caliphate. And the reality is, Islam is a political ideology. There is Sharia law, and there is no other law than that, according to a Muslim. And if a Muslim says anything else, they are lying to you, practicing taqiyya, which is another form of lying, but protecting your religion to advance your religion type nonsense. You can read the Quran. I've done work on it. I've read the religion. I have a lot of their works. I've done videos on it. So don't think I'm ignorant on this religion. Be informed on Islam and know the threats, but also be informed on your religion as well. As a Christian, I've done videos on Christianity, great videos on that. Defend your country, defend your land as a Christian. Again, we don't have a lot of places in this world. They've taken over large swaths of India. They've taken over large swaths of Pakistan, of the Middle East. Christians are not welcome there. And so we have to make sure that we have a place to defend ourselves and have the small arms. And one day, you know, again, back in the day, they were sending booze and all that during Prohibition. Well, we can return the favor because the time will come. It will come where they're going to need small arms to fight these infidel jihadists. And a lot of people just don't want to admit that yet. They're not there. I'm just telling you, I'm pointing out what's going to happen. I'm not saying any threats, right? But that's what's going to happen. People are going to be sending small arms, and I'm not going to hinder that. In fact, I might lose a rifle in a boating accident if I got to go help a fellow Christian militia in the UK take back their country against the Islamic takeover. Because we see these pushovers like Two-Tier Kier, they're Islamic fascists. They're helping Islam advance their religion in the country. The king, he's inept, he's doing nothing, even though I do like his royal coronation. That was pretty cool, seeing that Greek Orthodox influence in there. But again, it's up to us as Christians, because we're not seeing a lot of content come out from the UK. We're seeing the algorithm push a lot of these channels. Guys like me that might be actually from the UK, not from across the pond, and they might be seeing all of this happen. And so they're pushing out their content, but we're not seeing it. So I'm going to make sure that you guys see this content with the people I have. And again, we want to fight actual racism, but we're fighting Islam, and that has to be known. The media is full of utter garbage, trying to make this about minorities. And sure, there might be some neo-Nazis, and those have to be dealt with because those are neo-pagans, and I don't like pagans any more than Muslims. But we as Christians are going to take control of this mantle and make sure that the narrative is controlled. And so I am making an appeal to heaven, an appeal to the Christians out there. We need to make finances and efforts to get these small arms, eventually to our Christian brothers, and eventually make those small boat trips, because the Royal Navy's not going to do shit. The Royal Navy hasn't been doing nothing. They've been allowing millions of Muslim migrants. So what happens when millions of Christians from across the ponds come in to the UK, back to their ancestral homelands, to help their Christian brothers take back their country? Eventually that will occur, and Elon Musk and guys like him know that. They know that. I know that. You know, we wish none of this would happen, but Muslims got cocky. You have money from Iran, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, all these Muslim nations pumping all that funny money and shipping all these unwanted people that they don't want to Europe, to the United States, to Canada. And it's just destroyed the healthcare systems. It's destroyed the social fabric of these nations. It's undeniable. And they'll call you far right for pointing that out. And that's a shame, because there's true immigrants that need our protection. And true people from these third world countries that are Christians that are not getting the access to the immigration system that needs to take place. Instead, we're getting a bunch of radical Islamists and communists and all this weird this far left Islamo-fascist alliance, which is very odd, doomed to fail, but it's just, again, something I had to point out and make a video on. So what's your guys' thoughts on all of this? I'll probably make a part 2, a little bit of a rambling, but I just wanted to point this video out and see what your guys' thoughts are. As a person from the United States, I'm more than willing to help the fellow Christian citizens of the UK fight the, well, inevitable future of their country turning into Islamic State. Even the vice presidential candidate, J.D. Vance, he even made a little tongue-in-cheek reference saying that the United Kingdom will be the second country with nuclear weapons, the second Islamic country with nuclear weapons behind Pakistan. So it's a little tongue-in-cheek reference, but it's actually scarily true. Do we want one of our best allies, the United Kingdom, as Christians in America and Christians in Canada, Christians in Australia and New Zealand? Do we really want the United Kingdom turning into an Islamic caliphate? And do we want them armed with nuclear weapons? Answer that. No, you don't. So the reality is you don't want that. The reality is the implications of unvetted mass migration, especially from Muslim countries, just storming thousands every day. Every day, right now, there's hundreds or thousands every single day coming across the English Channel into the UK. Muslim men, fighting age, being set up in every small town. And they're going to come after you and take over you, and they'll have the media protecting them and saying, see, look at all these locals come out, and all they're waving is Palestine flags and all their union corporate nonsense. Like, they're all the same sign, far left nonsense. They're just told to go there, kind of like pay a crowd type thing, you know. And it's just like, yeah, we can see through it. Not one, like if I was a British person watching these riots on TV and I'm on the fence and I don't know what to do and I need to make the stand, I need to make an appeal to heaven, what am I going to do? I'm going to side with the British. The ones holding the Union Jack flags, the ones promoting their nation. They want something that resembled the Britain that they grew up on, the Britain that they see in TV, well, TV series 20, 30 years ago, and all what Britain used to be. You know, when people go to Britain, they're kind of let down. They're like, this doesn't feel like Britain. There's a few parts and parcels, but that shouldn't be the case. Shouldn't be the case at all, you know. No one calls Japan racist when they have controlled migration. I've been to Japan, haven't been to England yet, but I plan on it. But you know, no one calls Japan racist when they do the same things of controlling their migration. Everybody likes Japan, for the most part. I know for certain there's some people that don't like Japan. Korea, you know, for the most part, controls their migration. South Korea. No one calls them racist, right? So the Philippines, they went to war against Muslims trying to take over their country, right, in the southern Philippines. No one calls them racist, right? So we see a thing here where there's two-tier psychology, a two-tier system against white indigenous British people in their own country. It just boggles my mind. Now, here in the U.S., I am pretty anti-racist, actually. I mean, I have family members that are non-white. Some of my best friends are non-white. But I'm very ardently pro-Christian. I do know for certain, without Christianity as a base for this nation, it will fall apart, and that's what we've been seeing, drag queens, encroaching government and all that. We have assault weapon possibility bans and all that from Kamala Harris and her potential administration. And we have our own problems in the U.S. But what I'm seeing over here in the UK is it needs to be talked about. We need to finance, you know, these Islamic groups, CARE and all that. They finance so much to ship in more of their people from Muslim countries to non-Muslim countries like the UK. And they're unhindered. They are protected. They're allowed to spout their propaganda. Meanwhile, average Joes like us, the algorithm boots us down. And so it's a tragedy, a travesty. and it needs to be addressed by the common man raising up arms. So, guns like that, the AK, good option. But who's to say, as I stated earlier, all it takes is us Americans returning the favor. I know a lot of young men, personally not myself because I'm raising a family, but I know a lot of young men out there who are more than willing to go back to the homeland of Britain, fight for their nation. So an AR-15 is a good option. We can definitely ship these over in large amounts on small boats because, again, your government ain't going to do anything to help you, and they're not going to do anything to stop these from coming over with people like us. Well, maybe. We're white, so maybe they'll have, again, that two-tier policing because they hinder European migration, but third world migration from non-Europeans, totally acceptable. It's totally acceptable. And, of course, all those immigrants that legally went into the system, yeah, they get to see the system completely abused. And they just feel like, what the heck? And it's pretty funny, there's just a couple weeks ago, these same far leftists, they weren't going and protesting with the Jews who were being attacked by Muslims just literally for months on end because of the war between Israel and Hamas and Hezbollah and all that. But they're all of a sudden up in defense with the Islamists now against their own people. It's very screwed up. So, Christian man in the UK, I'm with you. I support you. I will financially support you. And one day, when you guys need it, there will be thousands of us sending little AR 80% lowers. They're technically not even guns. And they'll find drifting in the middle of the Atlantic for your men to pick up. You're welcome. Fuck you, Starmer.